Hello everyone, this is part 20 of What If Naruto Meets the Nine Tails Early, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The three remaining members of the Sound Four looked on in absolute terror as the blonde idiot that was once kneeling in front of them was suddenly replaced by this dome of red demonic chakra. The K intent that was radiating towards them was more than they had ever encountered before, stronger than even Orochimaru himself. Whoa, what is this? Asked Naruto, taking in the new chakra cloak that surrounded him. This is the four-tailed cloak. We don't have much time, so just listen to me and do what I tell you, said Kurama. A hand shot out of the dome, pinning Tayuya to a tree as one of the claws buried itself into her her. Kidomaru looked on desperately as he knocked another arrow into his bow and took aim. Maximum power, 150% accuracy. He called out before unleashing the arrow on the miniature Kyuubi that had just emerged from the dome along with the claw. The arrow was heading straight towards Naruto and he made no attempt to move as Kurama just told him to stay still and take the arrow. Naruto took the arrow as it hit him in the sea, shattering and causing Kidomaru to look on with a mixture of shock and terror as his attack did nothing. Kurama got a good laugh at the Spider-Man's expression. Alright Kit, follow real close here. We are going to do something that's going to blow these freaks off the map. With that, Naruto raised his head and the four tails formed a sort of semicircle just a little above his mouth. Balls of red and blue chakra began to form just above the mouth and within this semicircle as they all converged into a solid sphere of dense chakra. What the hell is that? Swore Saken. The two remaining sound could feel the energy radiating from that ball. This was going to be bad. Saken began going through a series of hand seals, as they figured this attack was going to be hard to avoid. The sphere finished forming and Naruto proceeded to swallow it as he himself inflated into what looked like a balloon with four tails sticking out of it. And then, Naruto unleashed the attack on the sound. Summoning Jutsu, Rashomon, shouted Saken, summoning a giant gate in the wake of Naruto's attack, a desperate attempt to shield him. Kurama just smiled as the ball of chakra at the forefront of the attack made contact with the gate, blowing the doors off its hinges and catching Saken and Kidomaru in its blast. The Sound Four were now As soon as he felt their presence disappear, Kurama recalled the four-tailed cloak, wanting to save as much time as he could to try and save Sasuke. Naruto was left with the one-tailed cloak when he made his way over to Sasuke. What Kurama had told him was correct. Sasuke was alive and there was a faint pulse. The arrow must have missed the herd by a mere millimeter because Naruto thought he could even see the faint beating of Sasuke's heart in that hole. Unfortunately, he could see B pouring out of the hole, and a lot of it. He's B badly. What do I do? Asked Naruto. Move your tail over his wound and carefully flow the chakra into his wound. I'll be helping a bit, but you need to keep yourself from pushing too much in. As Kurama instructed, Naruto moved the remaining chakra tail he had over Sasuke's wound and began channeling chakra into it. Like the demon chakra did to his own wound, Sasuke's began closing. It wasn't fast, but the B was slowing and Naruto could begin to make out some F that was beginning to regenerate around some of the more vital parts that were once visible in the wound. However, the healing halted as Naruto used up all the remaining demon chakra he had available to him. That will keep him alive, but he needs medical treatment immediately. There is still a great chance he could As for the girl, her wounds aren't as severe but they need attention as well. What do I do then? Konoha is at least a day away if I hurry. They won't last that long, said Naruto. Just hold tight Kit. I can sense a familiar presence closing in on us. He should be here just about now. Naruto looked up to see what Kurama was talking about. Ero Sennin. He shouted as Jiraiya emerged from the bush and the fox cloak disappeared. Naruto, thank Kami you're still Ali, watch out. Shouted Jiraiya as he jumped in the way of a kick aimed for Naruto. The kick was strong enough it sent Jiraiya crashing into a pile of trees, creating a rather large hole. Shibi. What the hell? Shouted Naruto as Shibi emerged on scene, kicking Jiraiya out of the way. I must say I'm impressed you have that much control over the Kyuubi, Naruto. But it seems even you have your limits. Now I'll be taking Sasuke and you'll just like the pathetic trash you just hissed Chibi in a familiar voice. You, said Naruto, staring at Chibi. Suddenly, their attention was captured by voices coming out of the hole in the trees that was created by Jiraiya. Geez Jiraiya boy, why did you have to summon us here? Said an old raspy voice coming from the hole. And right in the middle of dinner too, said another voice. This one sounded more like an older woman. I apologize for summoning you two like this, but my opponent is Orochimaru, so please lend me your help, said a voice that was most definitely Jiraiya's. You really need to learn Sage Mode on your own, Jiraiya boy, said the raspy voice. I wish I could, but I'm still just a tadpole compared to the two of you, said Jiraiya as he emerged from the hole in the trees with two smaller toads mounted on his shoulder. The first one was a green toad with a grey tuft of hair on his head. He wore a dark grey cloak. The second was a lighter green toad with bushy purple hair, purple lipstick, and a light purple blush to her cheeks. Jiraiya himself had changed as well. The markings on his face were different and his eyes were more toad-like. Not to mention his nose grew and he gained some warts. Fukasaku, Shima, will you help me? The two toads nodded. Whoa, is that really pervy Sage? Said Naruto, trying to do everything to keep himself awake. His body was tired from using the four-tailed cloak like that and he was on the verge of collapsing. Naruto, stay out of this. Today I'm going to put an end to Orochimaru, declared Jiraiya. Orochimaru laughed, off Shibi's face to reveal his own. Well Jiraiya, you really must be desperate if you're relying on the help of two old washed-up toads. Jiraiya didn't want to waste any time talking as he charged towards Orochimaru with an increased speed, taking a good shot at the snake which he dodged, or did he? The fist missed but Orochimaru was sent flying back nonetheless. Orochimaru quickly recovered, brushing off the Sage Chakra-enhanced punch like it was nothing. His borrowed body allowing him to take a much more intense beating. Orochimaru lashed out with some snakes from his hands, only to have them lassoed by Shima's tongue. Now, indicated Jiraiya as Shima-s Orochimaru back into a tree. Senpu, Gomon. The three sages shot out a combination of flame wind and earth at Orochimaru as they merged into a wave of molten mud. Summoning Jutsu, shouted Orochimaru just in time for a large snake to appear and coil around him. When the attack subsided, Orochimaru emerged unharmed from the charred remains of the serpent surrounding him and Orochimaru sending Jiraiya a look of severe annoyance. Jiraiya knew beforehand that Orochimaru would find a way to avoid that attack, so as soon as the attack was done, he charged at the snake Sannin with a Rasengan in hand. Orochimaru drew his sword of Kusanagi from within himself and used it to block Jiraiya's attack, the legendary sword being enough to stop the Rasengan. Once Jiraiya's attack had stopped, Orochimaru swung at the Toad Sage with his blade, just barely nicking Jiraiya in the end. Jiraiya took a few steps back, creating some distance between he and the snake. Ninpu, needle hell, shouted Jiraiya as his long hair shot countless needles at Orochimaru. He his way around most of the needles, but found that there were too many to avoid and took a couple dozen needles to the face, torso, and everywhere else. It looked as if Jiraiya had gotten Orochimaru, until he emerged from the mouth of himself. Orochimaru was now unharmed as an old molted body of his lay at his feet. Then Orochimaru bent down to the ground, unleashing a wave of thousands of snakes that went towards the Toad Sages. Senpu, Gomon, shouted Jiraiya as he, Fukasaku, and Shima unleashed the combined attack at the horde of attacking snake. The combined attack incinerated or buried all of the snakes. Kakuku, laughed Orochimaru from behind Jiraiya. He was standing between Jiraiya and where Naruto and Sasuke were. Jiraiya looked at his former teammate. This battle couldn't go on much longer as he was running low on Sage Chakra. He only had enough for maybe one or two attacks. I don't know Jiraiya, perhaps the Uchiha won't be the only one I take. You never know, perhaps I could find a way to turn that little brat of yours against the village, perhaps even unleash the Kyuubi on it. He seems to have good control over the beast, said Orochimaru. I wonder how the demon's chakra will react to the curse mark. Naruto could barely manage to growl at Orochimaru. Don't even think I'm going to let you near Naruto, let alone Sasuke, Gar. shouted Jiraiya as the sword of Kusanagi came up from behind and held Jiraiya through the sea. To Orochimaru's surprise, Jiraiya disappeared in a puff of smoke, revealing it to be nothing more than a shadow clone. Orochimaru barely had time to react as he felt Jiraiya coming from behind him. Go to hell, you snake. Senpu, ultra big ball Rasengan, shouted Jiraiya as he drove a giant Rasengan into Orochimaru's arms which he had brought up to block the incoming attack. However, he never expected this. Orochimaru cried out in pain as the Rasengan shredded his arms until there was nothing left below the shoulders. Orochimaru collapsed in pain as he began to sink into the ground. Damn you, Jiraiya. Don't think for an instant that you've won. I'll be back and I'll get my hands on that treasured Sharingan. And once I do, you can K the Leaf Village goodbye. Jiraiya tried to make another attack to try and finish Orochimaru off, but the snake managed to escape into the ground before that ever happened. The battle was over and once again, Orochimaru's plan to get a hold of a certain Uchiha had failed. Fukasaku and Shima returned back to Mount Myoboku as Jiraiya's sage mode ended. Now all that was left to do was to get the slowly Sasuke and Sakura back to the village for medical treatment. From the looks of their injuries, it would be close and there was no guarantee of saving them if they got back to Konoha. Both Sakura and Sasuke's injuries were extensive and they had lost a lot of bi already, not to mention there was no sign of Haku. Ero Sennin, said Naruto, growing ever wearier from the exhaustion of the battle. Don't worry Naruto, we'll do what we can. If we can get back to Konoha, soon it will see that they are okay, said Jiraiya as Naruto finally lost consciousness. Tsunade waited at the gate for the return of Team 7 and the recovery team. She had gotten a report from them just a few hours prior stating the severity of Sakura's and Sasuke's injuries and immediately had the prepped. It wasn't much longer before she saw the medics carrying stretchers bearing Sakura and Sasuke. They had a few life support seals on them, but surgery was required immediately. Where are Uzumaki and Yuki? Asked Tsunade, concerned for the rest of the team. Shizune answered. Uzumaki and Yuki are on their way back but their injuries are not life-threatening. As such, we felt it more dire to rush Haruno and Uchiha back to the village as quick as possible. Medical ninjas were trained to be able to move at incredible speeds in situations like this, faster than was possible for most jonin. Good. Get them in surgery stat. We need to hurry, ordered Tsunade. Shizune and the remaining medics rushed the 2S members of Team 7 to the hospital. Sakura and Sasuke had been placed in separate operating rooms with vast seal matrices that covered the entire room. With Tsunade overseeing Sasuke and Shizune overseeing Sakura, the operation was going on 20 hours now as they attempted to close the holes in the two genin. Outside one of the operating rooms sat Kazashi and Mebuki Haruno, Sakura's father and mother. They had been there for the past 20 hours, worrying for the daughter's life. Joining them was Ino and her team along with Lee. A few minutes later, the light to the room went off, indicating that the operation was over. By the time she had arrived at the hospital, Sakura had lost almost 40% of her bi. Not to mention her entire left arm had been shattered and the state of her left side was questionable. After further analyzing the situation, it appeared as if 6 of her ribs on the left side alone had been broken with 2 of them her lung. Another 2 ribs had broken on her right side. With everything at hand, the doctors estimated her chance of survival to be 50% at most. Finally, after what felt like hours since the light went off, it had only been 5 to 10 minutes in reality, Shizune emerged, carting Sakura on a hospital gurney. Is she? Asked Mebuki, stopping Shizune and taking a look at her daughter. Shizune gave them a reassuring smile. There were some points where we weren't sure she was going to make it, but everything came out all right. I think she'll make a full recovery, but we are going to have to keep her sedated for at least the next week while her injuries heal. Everyone let out a sigh of relief and Mebuki and Kazashi began thanking whichever kami had allowed for the daughter to live. Despite Sakura's extensive injuries, she was not the worst of the two. Sasuke, while he had fewer injuries as the sound had not actually been trying to K him, his were more dire. The arrow had just barely missed his heart and clipped a few major organs and arteries in the process. Just from that one injury alone, he had lost around 45% of his bi before being rushed to the 40% is about the most amount of bi a person can afford to lose before their body begins to shut down. His chances of survival were around 40%, but they could have been worse. This is what really caught Tsunade's attention. Sasuke's injuries were serious and would have taken an expert to heal. However, the medics reported that someone had done a small patch job on Sasuke's injury. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stop most of the major B and ensure he would live until they got him to the hospital. Even Jiraiya mentioned that Sasuke had been patched up before he or Orochimaru arrived. This only meant two people could have possibly healed him, Naruto or Sakura. Sakura, while Kakashi had begun to steer her in the direction of medical jutsu, was still barely skilled enough to provide the most basic form of first aid, let alone heal a wound this severe. Naruto on the other hand, he knew no medical ninjutsu. The only reason he could heal himself was the Kyuubi. Wait, that had to be it. The Kyuubi had to have been the one responsible for healing Sasuke. Unfortunately Naruto was still asleep and she wouldn't be able to find out until H was awake. Despite the contract, she had been doubting whether or not the Kyuubi was really good or not, but if he willingly helped Sasuke, was it really just a misunderstanding? Had the village been wrong about the Kyuubi and he wasn't the monster that everyone saw him as? Haku, unlike Sakura and Sasuke, was in no immediate danger when he came in. The worst of his injuries was a broken arm and a puncture wound on his cheek that thankfully wasn't deep enough to reach anything vital, such as the brain. Flashback. Haku focused as much chakra as possible as he could into his jutsu as Kimimaro struck at Haku's head with his bone spear. It looked as if Kimimaro was going to win when his spear reached the ice user's skin. It was at this point that Haku finally got his burst of chakra, taking just about everything he had and pumping it into this new jutsu that he and Zabuza had been working on for the past few months. Within a millisecond, Kimimaro froze, bond spear and all, and his attack stopped just as the spear dug a few centimeters into Haku's cheek. Any later and Kimimaro would have won, reaching Haku's brain with the attack. Haku began to breathe again for what felt like the first time in minutes as he carefully removed himself from the frozen dinosaur. He then braced himself as he heard cracks coming from Kimimaro, hoping that the dinosaur had not found a way to break free. Thankfully, Kimimaro toppled forward and into the ground, shattering himself into thousands of pieces. Haku had won as he himself collapsed from exhaustion. Minutes later, just after the blast of demonic chakra was felt, the recovery team arrived on scene with Zabuza looking as worried as ever, even crying. Kakashi was going to have fun with this later. End flashback. Out of all four of them, Naruto was in the best condition, just suffering from a major case of chakra exhaustion. Then again, the other members didn't have a 1,000-year-old demon inside of them that made him heal just about any injury overnight, or almost instantly when he was using more Fox chakra. It had been 3 days since the recovery team arrived back in Konoha and they had all been admitted to the hospital. 3 days since Naruto had been awake. It was finally around this time that Naruto began to stir. When he was finally beginning to come to, he felt a weight on his sea. Someone had restrained him while he was asleep, afraid that he would get out. Thankfully, the restraint was an actual body and not shackles or straps or anything. How long has she been here? Thought Naruto. Just moving his head, he looked around the hospital room. It was his usual room, which was a good thing, and there was a table with a few flowers on it next to him, along with a few cards from Kakashi, Iruka, Konohamaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, the Konoha 13, with the exception of Sasuke, Sakura, and Haku, who were also in the hospital, Hiashi and a few members of the Hyuga clan who actually liked him, Tsuki and Ayami, and even the owners of the Flaming Leaf Inn. And then there was this lump of lavender love draped across him. It was roughly 3 in the morning and Hinata must have fallen asleep. In fact, it was a surprise that she had actually been allowed to stay this late as the nurses, if not Tsunade herself, threw everyone out after visiting hours. Naruto began to stir and his caught Hinata's attention as she came to as well. Naruto, she said quietly as she began to notice movement. She turned her head to see if Naruto was actually awake and to her slight surprise, he was. Before Naruto could fully register what was happening, he was faced with another medical emergency, suffocation, as Hinata wrapped her arms tightly around him, afraid he was going to leave and not come back at all this time. She had seen the medics rush Sasuke and Sakura into the hospital. Those had to be the worst hours of her life, the time between seeing them in such critical condition and when Jiraiya came carrying an unconscious, but alive Naruto. Since then, she was practically at the hospital 24 out of 7, hoping that Naruto would wake soon. Hinata, can't breath, said Naruto as Hinata realized what she was doing and quickly loosened her grip on her blonde boyfriend. Naruto gave her a quick smile after regaining his breath and Hinata practically pounced him again, this time locking her lips against his. It took Naruto a few minutes to register what was really happening and for the question he had to know the answer to come to his head. Pulling back from Hinata, he asked. Hinata, Sakura, Sasuke, Haku. Are they? He asked. Hinata gave him a reassuring smile. Haku is fine, just asleep like you were. Suan-sama said there were times when she thought Sakura and Sasuke weren't going to make it, but thankfully, they're expected to fully recover, she said. Naruto let out a big sigh of relief. Then the next problem caught his attention as his stomach began growling. Both of them couldn't help but laugh until Naruto got out of bed, much to Hinata's protest. Naruto reassured her that he wasn't going anywhere as he climbed up onto a counter in the corner of the room and removed one of the ceiling tiles, pulling a container of instant ramen out of the ceiling. Hinata just stood at him wide-eyed, or rather the magic ceiling. Please don't tell anyone. I can't live on just hospital food. It tastes like crap, begged Naruto. Hinata told him not to worry as she found it funny that he had actually managed to hide a ramen stash in the hospital. Naruto went over to the sink. Thankfully, the tap water in the hospital could get hot enough for instant ramen if he just waited a few minutes. Afterwards, he made his way back to the bed, climbed in, making room for Hinata, and finished his ramen while telling Hinata the story of what happened. Jiraiya and Tsunade were in the Hokage's office as Jiraiya had managed to pick up a bottle of sake. This job was supposed to cure Tsunade of her alcoholism, yet it only seemed to be nurturing it. She then heard a knock on the door as Koharu and Homaru entered the door, just great. On the bright side, Danzo isn't here. Tsunade, we need to talk about the recent events regarding Orochimaru and the Sasuke, said Koharu. It was at this time that Kakashi appeared in the window. Geez, don't you guys ever use the door? She said, looking at Jiraiya and Kakashi. Both just smiled at her. It's become clear that Sasuke's going to be constantly targeted by Orochimaru, said Homaru. He needs training. He needs to become stronger. Konoha needs the Uchiha clan and we cannot afford to let him let alone fall into Orochimaru's hands. Tsunade sighed. Sadly there were parts of that she agreed with. We suggest you have Jiraiya take Sasuke on as a student and train him personally, suggested Koharu. No, I won't be taking Sasuke. Besides, I've already a student, said Jiraiya. You can't be talking about Naruto, objected Homaru. Jiraiya just nodded. But why? You'd rather take that demon over Uchiha-sama. Koharu felt a massive amount of intent directed towards him from Kakashi, Tsunade, but especially Jiraiya. Don't you ever refer to Naruto as demon again, threatened Jiraiya. Just know that if it wasn't for that demon, Sasuke probably wouldn't be alive, said Tsunade. What are you talking about? Asked Koharu. Before I go any further, just know that what I'm about to say will be considered an S-class secret, punishable by death, said Tsunade. Everyone in the room nodded. Good. Now if you'll make a oath to seal the deal. Homaru and Koharu questioned this decision, but it was obvious Tsunade didn't quite trust these two and as such she was requiring them to make a oath, not to mention this to anyone without the Hokage's permission or else they would drop over on spot. The two elders sighed as they made the oath, their curiosity taking over. When I arrived at the scene of the battle, 3 sound ninja that Orochimaru had sent to abduct Sasuke were practically obliterated. We were able to retrieve the body of a young girl and it looked as if a claw had been driven through her nearly decapitating her. Also, there was a huge crater in the forest where we recovered the head of another sound ninja. His body was nowhere to be found and we are certain it is no longer in existence, explained Jiraiya. Furthermore, when I went to check on Sasuke after battling with Orochimaru, it appeared as if some medical jutsu had already been performed on him to stop most of the I believe you've already been briefed on the injury Sasuke sustained. Then Orochimaru had to have done something to save Sasuke. After all, he seems to want Sasuke alive, said Koharu. No. Sasuke was healed before Orochimaru arrived and Sakura was too injured to even be conscious at the time, said Jiraiya. Tsunade then interrupted. The area where Sasuke was injured is an incredibly complex and vital area. Even if the sound ninja missed his heart, they has left a gaping hole in his right lung and severed many of the arteries in the area. Even I would have been hard-pressed to heal that injury. With everything given, Sasuke should have been S. There was only one being that could have saved Sasuke, said Tsunade. Wait, you're not saying the Kyuubi saved Sasuke? Said Koharu. I am. Naruto doesn't have any medical knowledge, so the Kyuubi must have at least instructed him how to patch up Sasuke, said Tsunade. But then that means the Kyuubi must be trying to gain control over Naruto. We must act before it can escape, worried Homaru. No, shouted Jiraiya. So what, you just expect us to wait while the Kyuubi breaks free? Said Homaru. This is why I'm taking Naruto as my apprentice. If anyone in the village can teach him how to harness the Kyuubi's power, it's me, said Jiraiya. I'm the one who best knows my late apprentice's seal, and I'm the only one who can stop the Kyuubi if it tried to escape. Like he would actually try. It seems as if he's become too fond of Naruto to even attempt something like escaping. Not to mention, there is the contract between the two of them, but they don't need to know about that yet. But why Naruto? It's not Naruto who needs the training, but Sasuke, protested Koharu. Sadly, that's where you're wrong. My spy network has discovered a group of S-class criminals named Akatsuki, and I am sure they will be coming after Naruto. They are after the tailed beasts after all, said Jiraiya. Naruto is in just as much danger as Sasuke, and I will not allow him to be neglected like he has for the past 12 years. What are you saying? That we've merely tossed Naruto aside? Asked Homaru. Yes, ever since he was cast out of the orphanage at age 4, Naruto has had to fend for himself, with the villagers not even offering the slightest bit of help. In fact, they've merely tossed him out on the street, abused him, and even tried to K him for no goddamn reason. Jiraiya was beginning to get really worked up. He took a few breaths, calming himself. I'll be taking Naruto away from the village for a few years to train him once I've wrapped up things in Konoha. There is nothing that you can say or do that will make me change my mind. Naruto is my apprentice, and that is final. But regardless of Naruto, what will we do about Sasuke? We cannot allow him to fall into Orochimaru's hands. We were lucky this time, but surely Orochimaru will be back, said a worried Koharu. It was then that Kakashi spoke up. We've already discussed that, and I've decided that I would be willing to take Sasuke as a personal apprentice of mine, said the one-eyed Jonin. But first, we need to figure out what to do with Sakura. I don't want to simply abandon her. Auto FN, with Haku, he is pretty much trained personally by Zabuza when he has the time. So Haku is not in need of a private mentor. Given that he is the only other one in the village with the Sharingan, Kakashi is the best person for teaching Sasuke, said Jiraiya. Very well, scowled Koharu. We'll give you a month to figure out what to do with the Haruno girl. After that, you are to begin training Sasuke personally. This is what the council has decided, Kakashi. I understand, said Kakashi as the two elders left the room. Kakashi then turned to the two Sannin. Can you let me know when my team wakes up? Tsunade nodded as Kakashi left, out the window, again. Jiraiya pulled out another bottle of sake. You know, you could take on Sakura yourself, said Jiraiya. I've actually thought about it. Kakashi's reports suggested that she would make for a good medical ninja, but there is something else she needs, and I'll only train her if she has it, said Tsunade. But there is something else I need to talk to you about. Something came up, regarding Sensei. Tsunade reached into her desk and pulled out a scroll with the Yondaim's mark on it. Tsunade told Jiraiya to read it, and he did. Hiruzen, I must apologize, but I am writing this in haste. It has come to my attention that Madara Uchiha is still alive and the one responsible for this attack. I believe the best course of action is now to seal the beast inside my newborn son, Naruto. I will be using the seal that I've been working on, which will allow him to eventually utilize the Kyuubi's power as his own, so that one day he will be able to end the thread of Madara once and for all. Unfortunately, this will cost me my own life, and I do not think Kushina will survive. With neither of us there, we hope that you will find someone who will care for Naruto like we would have. Within the B seal on this scroll are 2 letters from Kushina and I to Naruto. As a Hokage of the Leaf, I understand what you're thinking. I understand that you want to keep my Edeni a secret from my own son, but I ask you this, let him know who we were. Let him know that we loved him. I do not want my son to be condemned to the fate of wondering where he came from. Trust me, no trust Kushina. She knows best of all what that fate is like and the emptiness that comes with it. He will need all the love he can get to overcome the challenges that he will face. Kushina and I leave everything to him. Please make sure he is seen as the hero he deserves to be seen as. Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. Jiraiya was disgusted at the letter, or rather how the Sandaime handled the letter. Jiraiya knew when Kushina first came to the village, she had been an orphan with no knowledge of her family and Minato saw how she suffered because of that. This was the Yondaime's last will and Sarutobi-sensei had disregarded it, keeping Naruto in the dark about his parents and allowing the village to take numerous shots at him. Tsunade, was all the old toad could say. I don't know any more, Jiraiya. You and I both knew sensei. We both knew he respected Minato too much to simply disregard his final requests, even if it was for the good of the village. At the very least, he could have given Naruto his mother's name as their marriage was kept secret. Or he could have told Naruto to keep this a secret. Naruto trusted the old man, he would have kept it a secret if only sensei asked, said Tsunade. There's just no way the old man could have done this intentionally. There has to be more, there just has to, Tsunade was in disbelief. Instead, Naruto was cast out onto the streets and left to wonder why he was abandoned, a similar fate that Kushina had to face until she met Minato, said Jiraiya, taking a deep breath. I'll tell him, I owe him that much at the very least. Jiraiya, are you sure you want this burden alone? What if something happens? Said Tsunade. What if Naruto doesn't take it well? What are you really saying? Are you worried that Naruto may actually decide to go on a rampage through the village? Asked Jiraiya, wondering what it was that Tsunade was actually thinking. No, it's not that. I trust Naruto as much as you do, I just don't trust the village. Ever since that day, I've been worried for Naruto, as worried as I was for Naoki or Dan. Whatever Naruto's reaction, I don't want the villagers to see this as an opportunity to K the QB, she said, adding a distinct hint of disgust to the last part. Jiraiya thought for a moment. I need to take another trip here in a few weeks. There is something I need to do regarding the little project Hiashi gave me. I'll take Naruto with me and tell him then, away from the village. That will also give him enough time to let it sink in and for me to clear a few things up with him. Wait, are you going where I think you're going? Asked Tsunade. Yeah, it'll actually be a perfect trip to tell Naruto on, replied Jiraiya. Naruto woke up, still in the hospital with Hinata snuggling up next to him. His stomach was still him. The instant ramen at 3 o'clock in the morning did him no good. He began to work himself out of bed, feeling as energized as ever and made his way over to the window. This woke Hinata, but he assured her that he would be back. He was just going for a little breakfast. Naruto made his way through the village, still dressed in hospital robes. His target was Ichiraku, but he figured he would get something for Hinata. Out! Shouted the baker as Naruto was thrown out of the bakery that he went to get Hinata some breakfast. This landed him right in front of Hanabi, on her way to the academy. Naruto, asked the younger Hyuga, what are you doing here? I thought you were in the hospital. Hey Hanabi, I am, but I'm just getting breakfast. I can't stand hospital food. I was going to get something for Hinata, but the jerk baker threw me out, said Naruto. Hanabi sighed and went into the baker, coming out with a box of cinnamon rolls and handing them to Naruto. Here, these are Ne-san's favorite. See you later, Naruto, said Hanabi, before running off towards the academy. Well, that worked out better than I thought Naruto. He then made his way to Ichiraku to get their breakfast ramen that he would usually get for, well, breakfast. After collecting the ramen from Tsuki, he made his way back to the hospital. Ramen run successful. Naruto hoped through the window to find Hinata that Hinata had gone back to bed. Naruto opened the box that Hanabi gave him to find 6 rather large cinnamon buns inside. Can she really eat this much? Thought Naruto in a little bit of shock before taking one of the sweets and holding it under her nose. In a comical fashion, Hinata took a whiff of the cinnamony smell of the sweet and instantly snapped awake, snatching it from Naruto's hand. Imagine a starving chipmunk being given a nut. Naruto just stared at her with shrunken pupils as Hinata's attention was finally brought to him, causing her to blush. A warm laugh filled the room after a few moments of awkward silence. Hinata began to eat her way through the cinnamon buns as Naruto enjoyed his Ichiraku. Naruto! Shouted a voice on the other side of the door as Naruto had just finished the last of his ramen. Perhaps the ramen run wasn't as successful as he though. That voice was strangely familiar and it caused Naruto to jump and cower behind the bed. Tsunade then burst through the door and began scolding Naruto for his little ramen run before shuffling Hinata out the door so she could give Naruto a full checkup. Despite Naruto passing the checkup with flying colors, minus the violent protests when Tsunade prepared to give him a shot, she still requested that he stay in the hospital one more night. Since he was allowed to move around inside the hospital, Naruto made his way to Sakura's and Sasuke's rooms. Tsunade informed him that Sakura wouldn't be awaking for a few more days and Sasuke was likely going to be out for another week while they healed, but he just had to see with his own eyes that they were still alive. Thankfully, they were. Opening Sakura's door, he found her parents inside. Surprisingly, they didn't shoo him away like most of the other parents would have done. Naruto tried to offer an apology, but they stopped him. Tsunade had told them everything that had happened, at least everything that she knew, and the Harunos came to the conclusion that if it wasn't for Naruto, then Sakura could have likely s. While Sakura's mother had been a civilian all her life, her father was a retired shinobi. He knew the dangers of the life and didn't place any of the blame on Naruto, or his inhabitant. Naruto made his way towards Sasuke's room, but was stopped when he encountered a mob that he hadn't seen since the academy, Sasuke's fangirls. He'd come back later, once the fangirls cleared out. He decided to see if Haku was awake and thankfully he was. Naruto had wanted to know what happened to Haku during that fight and after Haku and Naruto exchanged stories, he was thankful that Haku had managed to take care of Kimimaro. Even with 4v5 instead of 3 version 4, Kimimaro would have probably made things much harder after Haku described the boy's abilities. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.